to today's Energy Central and Utility 2030 Power Session entitled Women Who Spark, Winners Weigh In, Ensuring Energy, Equality, Equity, and Justice in the Energy, as with energy. Now, I'd love to kick things off by turning our floor over to our moderators. We have co-moderators today, Courtney and Edwin. I'm going to turn the floor over to you. Welcome to the event. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hi, Courtney. It's good to see you again.
It's so nice to see you, Edwin, and to be here with Jessica, Maureen, and Jody, and all of our attendees today.
Awesome, awesome. Well, why don't we jump right into this? We're going to first let's introduce some of the folks who are going to be on the panel. These esteemed folks that are deeply immersed in our industry. Why don't we do some introductions here?
I think that makes a lot of sense. And Edwin, maybe we should actually start with you. You should at least introduce yourself briefly, just for everyone who's listening in.
Sure, thank you. I'm Edwin Crow. I'm with eSource, a company that looks at data science in the industry, research and advisory, and looks at technology solutions for utilities on behalf of utilities.
And hello, everyone. I'm Courtney Henderson. I'm the head of market strategy and policy at Resource Innovations. We're a clean energy consulting firm. And I am also the mayor for the town of Truckee. We're way up in the Sierra Nevadas at about 7,000 feet. And if you can see out my window, we are having a very big snowstorm, about 3 inches an hour right now. So hoping internet to remain stable for us. So with that, we're so excited today to be talking about energy equity, equality, and justice as the energy transition progresses. And we have 3 incredible panelists with us, and we asked them each to sort of give their own introductions, because we really want them to tell their story of how they came to work in this energy, why they care about the energy transition, and why they care specifically about addressing energy equity within their organization. So I'm going to start with Jody Allison. Jody is the VP of Transformation at Liberty Utilities. Jody, do you want to give a quick 30 to 60 seconds?
Sure, thanks. Jody Allison, nice to see everybody. Glad to be here today. Very excited to have the opportunity. Energy transition is extremely important. It's one of the things that drew me to this industry. I started out in working in other industries and watching all of the change from our customers' expectations to the demands on the different businesses, the utilities, and it was really exciting to see all the opportunities in the space. And when you think about how this is evolving over time, and I know we're going to talk about that today, it's pretty exciting to think about how we all can band together and be part of the solution and driving change and driving forward as we continue to look at our opportunities. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll turn it back to you, Courtney.
Thank you, Jody. That's wonderful. Let's go right over to Maureen Boland. Maureen is the Chief Growth Officer at Utegration.
All right, thank you so much, Courtney. I've been working in the energy industry from the start of my career, so that's been over 30 years. And believe it or not, I started as a nuclear engineer in the industry, working on new nuclear plant design and plant services, which eventually found my way into applications that make utility engineers, maintenance teams, and operators more efficient and effective at what they do. Providing decision support platforms and the like for power generation, transmission, and distribution side of the industry, which eventually led me into other commodities, gas and water commodities, and then eventually into the customer side of the house, which eventually led me to a company called SAP. And today I work for Utegration as the Chief Growth Officer. Utegration is an SAP service and solution provider that works with more than 70 utilities and energy companies across North America. And do I define my energy transition definition now, or do I just wait for that in a moment here?
Hold on to it for a moment.
Okay, cool.
I like that you're ready. So next, let's turn it over to Jessica Satoris. Jessica is the Environmental Conservation Supervisor at the City of Colton in California.
Hi, thank you, Courtney. So I have been in the power industry and water industry for now over 10 years. 12 years before that, I was in the education environmental industry, I'll say. I kind of changed careers because I felt like once I got into my current position, there was opportunity for moving programs and regulation on the energy side of things and water as well. There was a big transition point, and I know it's happening for everybody in the industry. The regulation, specifically in California, has been changing drastically and very quickly, and we're just trying to keep up, but it's all very good. And I'm happy to say that all these initiatives currently are helping move our utility and the water industry in a very positive direction, and just being better stewards to our residents that, you know, depend on us to be good stewards, and setting that example. I'm also a planning commissioner for the city of Highland, where I live, and I am the vice chair of the California Municipal Utilities Agency, starting in January for regulatory.
Wow.
And we're excited for you with that, Jessica. So I think what's so unique about this panel today is we have perspectives represented from the private sector, utility side, and government. And we don't often get all of those perspectives in the same room together. So you're all in for a treat today. We're going to have a sort of moderated question and answer type format. And we're also encouraging everyone who's listening in to go ahead and put any questions or thoughts that you have into the chat. This really is an opportunity for us to dig into some of these hard questions of what is energy equity and how do we address it and what are the challenges inherent in it? How do we then solution for those challenges? So please go ahead at any point during, you know, the next 90 minutes or so and put your questions in at any time. With that, Edwin, I think we're ready to sort of start to dig into our conversation, and maybe you have a few thoughts to tee up how we're going to start talking about the energy transition.
Let's put the framework around this. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, we talk about the energy transition is causing. Well, what is the energy transition? So let's just dig into that a little bit. And we're going to ask the panelists here, you know, what does it look like to you? You know, when we were talking earlier, I was sharing with you, you know, the energy transition that I'm seeing from my perspective is, you know, big electric utilities were looking at distributed energy and it's changing their world. And how is that going to change? And then all of a sudden, the onset of electric vehicles, and no one better than California to see the impact of what it's going to do to change that industry. But it's going to drive tremendous CapEx investments, which can drive up rates, which can then cause problems for those who are already having problems, you know, challenges paying their bills and things like that, and just living. So I'd love to get perspective from Jessica, Maureen, and Jody, just on what when you say energy transition, I'm sure you talk about it over the dinner table. What does it mean to each of you? We'll start with Jody.
Let's start with you.
Sure. So I think first I'm just going to talk a little bit really quickly about Algonquin Power and Utilities, who is the parent company of Liberty. We have an exciting business, and one of the things that drew me to the company, and it ties right to your question, is that the company started out as a renewables company in the late 80s, and that's really how it started, and then acquired regulated utilities. We serve water, electric, gas, and wastewater, and so in all different modalities, and we have over 1 million customer connections, almost 300,000 more anticipated, and we operate in 13 states, 1 Canadian province, Chile, and Bermuda. So it's an exciting business, and when I joined the company, part of it was asking myself this very question, you know, what does energy transition mean? And when I had the opportunity to join an organization that really had a foundation in changing the way we look at how we use our natural resources, it was really exciting. And so for me, energy transition means looking at how we use our resources and how we can evolve that to leave for generations a better place than we have right now. So I think it's really important that we take a look at all different aspects, whether it's water, gas, electric, wastewater, how we treat all of these resources, how we use our natural resources, and how we take the opportunities, learn from the past, take advantage of technology, take advantage of a lot of creativity that we come with as human beings, and look at how we can make it a better place. But with transition, the human condition presents challenges, right? Because transition isn't always easy. And so part of it is like when we talk about energy equality, these are my personal opinions, but it's how do we get everybody to take this journey together and not leave people behind? We know when it comes to technology, early adoption is not generally, there's an economic component to it. Well, that's not helpful when we're talking about sustainability and how we treat our natural resources and how we want to operate as the human race. So I think from our perspective, I think we have a huge opportunity. When I talk about transition, it's how are we going to continue to evolve? I think the organizations that exist today play a huge role in that. And I think as we continue to move forward and we talk about equality, how do we make sure that this is an issue that we look at from a very broad perspective to make sure that we aren't leaving people behind? So I'll leave it at that.
Maureen?
All right, great answer there, Jody. So from my perspective, just to kind of to address the first question, what is the transition about? It's offering better choices, right? And what does the word better really mean? It's finding ways to offer, probably in the context of commodities and commodity services, and then the products and services that are dependent upon those commodities, be it gas, electric, or water. Better products and services that are going to service the overall goal, overarching goal of, our communities, right? Which is to provide more sustainable answers, right? So it's transition is about offering better choices and finding ways to make those choices economically viable for the communities we serve. That in a nutshell. But we certainly have a pretty large chasm to cross to figure out how to get there, right? I think, I live in California, I actually live in the same community that Courtney lives in. She's my mayor. So that's pretty exciting, and we're in the same snowstorm together today. I was looking for a car last year, Edwin, and we looked, and I felt really obligated. I've got to look at all of the vehicles on the market that are electric vehicles. My husband worked at Tesla at the time, so I felt really obligated to look at the Teslas. And frankly, I found them to be rather expensive, and I was worried about durability and practicality for the Sierra Nevada mountain region where we live. But the main issue, affordability from purchase through the maintenance life cycle to ongoing electricity as a fuel source, that's something we need to think about how to make more equitable, and that's part of this energy transition discussion.
Yeah.
Very good. Interesting. Well, Jessica?
So I feel like we have been going through an energy transition since deregulation in the state of California. So we could go back to Enron. There was a big shift. And you're right, there is now distributed generation that is becoming prevalent everywhere. The state mandates many to incentivize it. For IOUs in particular, they are allowed to oversize their systems, and that's okay. In our utility, being a municipally owned small utility, we have rules and regulations that prevent that, just to keep the equity. You tend to forget, even though they're great, good things for the environment. I think a lot of us in California didn't realize, once you start putting so much distributed generation in your power supply mix, which Colton did, where I am representing Colton Electric Utility, and it was an incredible option for us. But the entire state was forced to go into that direction, which was a good thing for the environment. The problem was they didn't realize about so much solar in the middle of the day and what happens when the sun goes down. We do want to be good stewards of the environment, but at the same time, residents and businesses want their power at night. And once 4 o'clock hits, the power generation on the grid in California goes down. So what is the consequence of that? Well, in California, we have now times during the year in August and September where there may not be enough, and we're desperately asking everybody to curtail between 4 and 9, when historically speaking, it used to be between noon. And so that was a large transition for us. So we're learning how to now live in this present future where technology is going to be probably a key on helping us get to a sustainable grid. And so I think that energy transition has been a big part of how we now plan and what we're looking at in the future to meet our, in the state of California, our RPS goals for, and AB 32 goals, and the whole state being GHG neutral before 2050. So power supply, you used to do long-term contracts. That's changing now. You really can't do that. And so it's just a whole new world for us, and it's exciting, and it's going to be neat to see how technology will help us get there.
I love listening, being on these panels of you know, the whole Spark sessions. I always get so much from it. I mean, just look at the different perspectives we've got. The detail Jessica's talking about, and Jody, just the broad view of the responsibility there. This is very exciting. Well, Courtney, we want to get into some of the discussion.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think what was so interesting about that too is there's definitely some common threads running through some of the things that you're saying, right? Technological challenges. EVs are a great example of that. I mean, quite frankly, as an industry, we've done a bit of a disservice around, you know, how we market EVs. It's incredibly complex for consumers in a lot of ways. It remains cost prohibitive. So how do you ensure that you're serving, you know, historically, you know, disinvested or underserved communities? And you've already all started to get into some of the challenges themselves, which we're going to talk about. So tell me a little bit about what energy equity means sort of in the context of your organization, right? You're already starting to talk about that as you were talking about energy transition specifically, but how are your organizations thinking about energy equity and putting that at the forefront of whether it's your program design or development, implementation, whatever that happens to be, your services, et cetera. Why don't we start with Maureen for this one?
Yeah, so okay, let me back into this a little bit. We realized, my company, Utegration, realized a lot of what we do either directly supports or enables energy transition as a start. So first, we have a services practice that is focused on implementing advanced metering infrastructure, and especially focusing on integrating that to the utility meter to cash process, or those set of processes, in a way that helps each utility realize their business cases for AMI. And that's important because that's the part of the mechanism of how we achieve some of the things that Jessica and Jody talked about earlier in the conversation. We also help utilities harvest their usage data to leverage it in predictive applications, like a load planning application that we built for a specific utility and market to other utilities, which is very data driven and helps drive cloud-based apps that help utilities and their customers, consumers like us, make smarter choices. We focus a lot on the concept of sustainable operations, and for us, that means we implement technology in a way that requires less intervention and less funding from the utility in the long run. And what that means is the utility, like Colton, can reinvest their savings in other strategic initiatives like energy equity programs. And if we want to get to energy equity specifically, our goal is to continue to evolve our company solution footprint to drive smarter energy and consumer choices and continue to help our customers achieve their transition goals. And one of our clients, DTE, I'll name, does just that. They offer time of use rates and innovative products and services that are not just electric via a self-service portal that is helping their company and their consumers more rapidly achieve their goals in the area of energy equity, and then also sustainability overarching.
Thank you for that, Maureen. Jody, let's jump over to you. How does your organization think about energy equity? What are some of the things you're tackling?
So I think, just to add on to what Maureen said, like, we have a lot of programs, and I could speak to specific programs in place, whether it's AMI or it's time of use rates, a lot of things that we're trying to employ to be able to allow people to have make better decisions based on information. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to get maybe the conversation or try to push our conversation in the direction of is, how do we change the dynamic around two things? One is when we talk about our customers, a lot of times we talk about educating them, and a lot of it's been push, right? Like it's pushing information and it's trying to get people to understand. We need to create an environment where it's pull, right? So like people are looking for programs, they're looking for opportunities, they want to know more, they want to be able to digest and consume something and make decisions because they trust us and they know that we're doing the right things for them to make sustainable decisions, right? Like, so I think there's that. And then I think the other thing is when you look at, to basically go back to what Maureen had said and build on that a little bit, it's like we need investment, right, to be able to continue to grow our capabilities. It's great we've got some of these programs today, but how do we keep being able to invest in those things, right, and be able to kind of move the needle forward? And whether it's with working with public policy or whether it's working with looking at ways in which we consume energy, in thinking about, instead of looking at how do we pay for it on the back end, how do we change the way they consume it on the front end so that it doesn't turn into the problem on the back end, which allows us to invest more because it reduces costs. So there's all of those specific conversations that to me are an important part of our dynamic and our fabric at Liberty. And I think, you know, some of them, like I said, AMI and time of use rates and some of these very specific programs are already underway, but I think we have a lot more work to do and a lot more opportunities. So I'll leave it at that.
Jody, I love that you started to give a few examples too, just as sort of a teaser for our attendees. We're going to have some specificity around some of those products, programs, and services in just a little bit. So with that, Jessica, let's turn it over to you for your thoughts. Again, we're talking about what energy equity means to your organization and some of the things that you're tackling at a high level in that realm.
So for City of Colton Electric Utility, to us, that means having a community that's overburdened with pollution, unenergy efficient home and housing. And for Colton, we do struggle in that area. We have 180 trains that come through Colton a day. We have a lot of trucking. The community is old. It's over 130 years old. So the housing stock is old. A lot of the homes have been passed on to generation. So as a utility, we make tough decisions that we're going to do a lot of direct install. We're going to try to help get into the homes of our community because not everyone's going to want to get a rebate like our traditional programs. So in those respects, we've changed a lot of the way we think about energy efficiency and how to reach our customers. One neat thing as far as energy infrastructure as a utility, we've been very progressive with our power supply. We're GHG neutral. We only have a small natural gas peaker plant, but all of our power comes from geothermal, wind, solar, majority solar, and some nuclear. So our portfolio is clean, but the community itself, unfortunately, is burdened with all these other factors that are beyond our control. And I did want to mention one thing specific to Colton in regards to things that are an equity problem that we are working to solve. Is we have so many homes that put solar on, and once they become solar, customers, they're no longer paying the distribution and costs for infrastructure. So then you have our community, then again, it's not affluent, it's a disadvantaged community, and they're in a sense subsidizing those customers that have solar, and they can't afford solar. So it's not a fair. It's not fair and equitable at this time. And so for us, that's a focus on what's a challenge and what we're trying to work on and what we think is equity problems that we're in the industry that we're dealing with.
Wow.
Jessica, I love that you brought that up. And when we get to some of those specific programs, I'm definitely going to ask you for a little bit more detail on sort of how you're tackling that. I think that our audience would love to hear that. I'd invite, again, just because we've had attendees kind of filtering in, don't forget you can put questions into the chat as we go. And I'd invite our attendees right now, if you have a definition of energy equity or a way that your organization thinks about it, go ahead and toss that in the chat. Again, we're all here to learn from one another. Edwin, do you want to pick it up and kind of move us along to our next section?
Yeah, you sounded almost like a mayor there, wanting to see some specific details of what they're doing. All right. Careful. Jessica, I'm sitting here when I'm hearing you, I hadn't thought about it that way of, when you get off the grid, you're no longer supporting, the cost goes up for everyone. It's almost like a school tax. It's fine when you have kids in school and you pull your kids out of school and I don't want to pay that tax anymore. My kids are already educated. So
But yet you do
that's
anyway.
really
Mhm.
that's very interesting perspective there. But can we let's start to move a little deeper. And let's stay with you, Jessica. What are your companies? What's the City of Colton's objectives and goals related to the energy transition?
So I loved hearing from Maureen and Jody about AMI, and that's kind of like, we need to get there. We don't have AMI. We have what's called AMR. It's before you become a full smart utility. You have the infrastructure, but it's not networked to actually function as a full AMI. And it's one of those things we need to get to. Right now, our industrial customers have smarter energy management systems at their facilities than we do. So we want to get to the point where our customers don't have that situation. So that's just one example of a goal, is we need to get AMI. And we know it's something in a leadership role that'll have to happen soon, and everyone's kind of afraid because the billing system has to talk to the new AMI system, and there's challenges there. Currently, our water utility is moving in that direction, and we must have half the customers in water getting bill guesstimations because it still doesn't work. So this has been an interesting kind of crash course on learning how now you have all these new technologies, and the software and the companies need to work together to function so the billing system and the AMI system work.
Well, let me stay on you. I'm asking you another question. I guess it's really tied closely to this, but we wanted to get in. What are some of the challenges to achieving these goals? What do you see? Is it public? Is it the general John Q public? Is it your customer base on the industrial commercial side? What do you see as major challenges in moving forward?
The challenge is cost and fear. The cost, because it's going to be a very large capital improvement expense.
Okay.
The fear that it will not function properly and misbill our customers. And we've had examples in California, like LADWP, where customers were getting $50,000 bills, and for a 6-month period, it was on the news. And I think leadership sees that, and it makes them fear to move in that direction, even though it's needed. And now LADWP has a completely working, functioning system, but for the first 12 months, it didn't function as they promised, so to speak. So I think there's that fear there in a lot of the directors to move in that transition.
It's funny. I'm just thinking, I'm in utilities every single week. And I remember during that time, LADWP, multiple customers would pull out the press release and go, I don't want to be them. I mean, it's
no, it's true. And it's that sentiment is still there.
Yeah.
So, but it's a challenge, but we can't just not move forward and transition when everything's changing around us. You have to get there.
Right. Well, let's jump over. I'm going to jump over to Jody and then over to you, Maureen, just in the different areas. We'll go to another, utility perspective. And I know, Jody, you're looking at multiple states, multiple areas. Just what are some of the goals and objectives that you guys have for this?
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity. I'm gonna try to just highlight this, but also I see there's a question in the chat. Maybe answer that a little bit in the same time. So when you ask me what ours looks like, I'm going to go back to strategy and sustainability. And we have a woman, Helen Bremner, and she runs our office. And if you look, we just put out an ESG report, and that ESG report really details a lot of what we're doing. And most importantly, it really contains a good summary of our environmental, social, and governance goals. Just some of the highlights recently. So when we talk about specifics and what we're doing, and I'm going to tie this back to our employees and some of the things that Jessica just mentioned. The highlights, just thinking about our generation through 21 has moved from half to 2/3 of our generation portfolio is sustainable. solutions, 15% reduction in emissions from 20 to 21. All these facts are from August of 22 because things change very rapidly. And so just try to put a line in the sand. We have 600 megawatts of wind. We closed an actual coal facility to help make the transition there, and that went well. We have purchased an RNG facility in Wisconsin, pursuing renewable natural gas and what that potential has for us. We've created partnerships with Meta for 112 megawatts of wind, Chevron for solar, and we've looked at how we can increase our diversity, inclusion, and making sure that we have 44% of our board is women and 44% of our executive team is women. Our employees have raised over $500,000 for their communities and over 5,000 hours donated of their time. So our ESG report really talks about those environmental, social, and governance goals, but most importantly, how do the employees know how they're supposed to be delivering against this? So what do we believe is our goals or our strategy around transition in the energy space? But how do we make sure that our employees are tied into this and they really understand what we're trying to do? We have measures. Some of those measures are highlighted in there. 75% renewable generation by 2023. We're at 65%. We actually achieved our emissions goal of reducing our emissions by 1 million metric tons from 2017. That we have achieved. We've added 2,000 megawatts of renewables between 2019 and 2023. We're at 1657, so we're almost there. As that winds down, social, we try to achieve 30%, over 30% of women in leadership. We want top quartile quality service. We're almost there. And employee engagement, we're also trying to achieve top quartile. And when it comes to governance, we've already achieved some of our goals there as well. So that report that is on our website really highlights the strategy of how we're going to make the transition, and our goals really, when it shows the dashboard and shows how we're doing, that really helps us tie everybody in our company to what is it that we're doing to achieve that, so that we're all working forward. Because we know, to Jessica's point, this is scary, it's hard, and it takes a relative amount of investment. And with the interest rate pressures currently in the environment due to inflation, it only makes it a little bit harder. So that's really how I would support that question.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. And this is the ESG report, and it's on the website. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Yeah. So if you want to go out and take a look at it, and it actually shows us how we're doing relative to peers in the industry as well. So there's several different rating agencies that have, just give a view on how we're doing relative to our peers. So it's great information. I know it's probably nighttime reading, but it really is a good opportunity to learn more about the industry, or just see what some other folks are doing and gain a little insight. So appreciate the opportunity to share that with folks, and it is there and available to you.
So you mentioned some of the challenges in achieving these. You're talking about the interest rates and just how that's affecting your ability to move forward. Are there any others that you just think of that, wow, this is really within our control, that that are challenges today in achieving some of these goals that you've described?
Yeah,
you're leading the way.
Those people that know me know that I'm a very optimistic person, and I think we have a great amount of control over this, but it's a hard uphill climb, right? So there's a lot of work to do, and I think that really working with our customers to help transition from that push to pull that I talked about earlier is really critical. People really need to understand what's at stake, and they need to understand why some of the solutions that we're driving for make sense, and really need to understand, like, it's kind of that understanding, what can I do? Like, sometimes this topic is so big, right? If I could tell someone, just put this amount in your recycle bin, do this, whatever it is, like 3 simple tasks to change your behaviors in a week. Maybe that's a great place to start, and it makes it much more manageable for people than trying to swallow the entire energy transition and how do I get involved and how do I participate. But we really got to work through that with our customers because we really need to change that dynamic to enable ourselves to continue to move. The interest rates put pressure on capital investment, right? So that's going to be something we're all going to be dealing with. And I think the other thing is it's marrying the wisdom of the people that are heavily engaged in this industry and have been for a long time with all of the new technology, and how do we bring that together and get better solutions. They don't have to be diametrically opposed. We need to marry that stuff up and take the opportunities we have. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, Maureen, we'll let you wrap this up with regard to, goals and objectives today. We'll leave it to you, the nuclear engineer, to kind of sum this all up for us simply so we can understand it.
I would love to wax poetic about that topic in particular, but I'm gonna start more broadly. First, it's just super impressive what both of your companies are doing, Jessica and Jody, and make progress every day. It's really, really impressive. Integration strategy around this is to innovate. And we don't just say that word, we live that word. And I'm fortunate, I work with people who I chose to work with. I mean, I was super excited to come to integration, work with these people. They're ready and willing to think about a better way to solve a problem each and every day. Yesterday, I was just hosting my quarterly business review with our company strategists and thinking about 2023. And quite a few bright ideas emerged for our next generation of products and services that will advance our strategies in energy transition, from the concept of making AMI more sustainable and more cost competitive via a nodal cloud-based integration framework, to building new products that sit within the ERP solution, making the ERP work more efficiently, eliminating the need to fund expensive third-party systems that don't add value to the digital process and data core, and building more accelerators, because we have a habit in the utility industry, and I think we're getting better as we move along. I mean, Jody's project over the last several years, and will continue for a few more, to implement ERP, work and asset management, and CIS in a same way across the Liberty footprint. That's a pattern we all need to replicate. And that's something learning from Jody and the industry, have taken to integration. We've got an accelerator now that does that same concept for utilities, making it more standard, right? Embrace, don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. Keep that cost for implementing those solutions as low as practicable and as achievable, so that we can give you back money into your investment portfolio for your solutions, so that you can accelerate your journey toward energy transition. Some of the challenges is getting utilities to embrace some of those things, right? Getting them to embrace the concept of standardization, because that does help, right? The concept of a pre-configured solution. That's one of the challenges. But the other challenge is talent in an ever competitive world, in a talent pool that gets harder to attract talent to the utility industry, or even to some of the service providers who service the utility industry. Attracting that talent, retaining that talent, you can add the pressures of inflation that just actually increases the cost to retain the talent. Those are some of the things that we struggle with. And to answer the question in the chat, our company works very, very hard to attract diversity into our talent pool. That's one of the things we most prize about our team. We look for diverse points of view. We look for diversity in general. Our leadership team is over 50% led by women, and in different ethnicities. So we're very proud of that. We're proud of the energy and the educational focus that we put into it when we do attract new talent to integration, or help our utility customers find new talent, because they're always looking for talent too. When we attract them into integration, we have a whole learning and development life cycle where we focus on trying to make sure that everybody understands the why. You brought up the why, Jody. It's so fundamentally important, not just for customers, but for our employees, right? The why we're doing what we're doing. and why you're going to make a difference when you do this. That tends to energize our team and keep them excited about the work that we do for the industry.
Well, Edwin, I absolutely love hearing about all of these different goals and the organizational strategies that you're all using to move towards achieving those goals. And I'm sure a lot of our attendees listening in have some similarities and crossover on some of those goals as well. So thank you for that. I want to dive a little bit more into some of the risks. We've already started talking about these, kind of alluding to some of the risks and what we're up against. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to, pick maybe your top 2 or 3 risks that need to be mitigated to ensure we're offering an equitable energy transition to everyone, and tell me how you're going about tackling those top 2 or 3 risks. Let's start with Jessica for this one.
So when you say and describe the word risk, I think for a utility that has so many third-party distributed generations getting in between us and our customer, the elephant in the room is it's not going to be free to have a completely GHG neutral grid. It's not going to be free, and there's costs involved for that, and sometimes higher costs. Even though solar is cheap cost, it's the rest of the evening from 4, in the middle of the night. How are we going to provide power at a good cost during that time? So I think that's the risk as a utility. The more we raise our costs just to meet the demand, how do we have the risk of customers saying, you know what, I'm going to go get battery storage, I'm going to go get solar by myself and pay them, even though they may be paying higher costs, than be part of you. So I think that's one of our major, as a whole, business of power. It's not how it used to be. It used to be you only had us as a choice, and that's changed. And I think as a utility, we hear it all the time. We can never sit in a seat where we're going to say and put our head in the sand and pretend like, oh, well, that's not going to happen to us because Blockbuster Video did that, and we're not Blockbuster Video.
Jody, let's jump over to you. Just thinking about some of the top or biggest risks that you're working to tackle to make sure we're offering an equitable energy transition to everyone.
Yeah, I think the biggest, so I guess the couple that I would lead with are it's really understanding the voice of the customer, right? So when we talk about an equitable solution, if you don't start from a place of understanding the customer and really getting at what their needs are, what their challenges are, a lot of times, good intended, but we ask questions in a way that we really don't get the right answers. Like, yes and no responses is not the way to get really the information we need. So are we asking the right questions of our customers to really understand what their needs are or what their struggles are so that we can really get to an equitable solution that will work, right? So my biggest fear, or one of the risks that I see, is making sure we understand our customers. The next one I would talk about is really probably relates more to public policy and investment. It's are we putting our limited resources into the right things? Jessica mentioned the challenge with solar. Storage is a big topic, right? So how do we make sure that we're capitalizing on the right activities to get the biggest bang for our buck, and making sure that it responds to those customers' needs, wants, and desires as far as how it will best help them. So I think for me, I would lead with those two. And if we can really work on solving those two, I think that would help us really come forward with a smart plan as far as how we focus on equitable solutions.
Jody, I love that you bring up voice of the customer. One of my favorite things to tell people when they say, how do we tackle this or that? It's, well, are you truly listening to the communities where you want to be working, right? Are you actually in the places and spaces where your customers, constituents, communities actually are? And I think if we go back to that EV example really early in our conversation, I mean, we have historic investments coming out of the IRA and previously the IIJA with NEVI funds and infrastructure for EVs. But it's not enough, right? To just say that we're going to put EV charging infrastructure in, historically disadvantaged communities. What does that actually mean? How are we engaging customers? How are we listening to those communities to ensure that those investments are benefiting those communities as well, whether it's around workforce training or job development or other opportunities, and knowing what our communities actually want. So thank you for bringing that up. I think it's so critical.
Thanks.
Maureen, let's move over to you for your thoughts on this one. Go right ahead.
I want to build on what Jessica and Jody I don't want to repeat what they've just said, so I think I'm going to move to a different topic, which is inertia. That's a risk. Basically, not taking the steps that we can take right now to start the process, just the forward progress of starting a little bit now gets a long way, will get you a long way. So I don't think some of the things that are easy enough to start would cost too terribly much, and they would make energy equity accessible, or at least the conversation could start. And so some of those things could be, rates or programs like the self-service portal that I talked about a little bit earlier, making self-service portals that, keep your customers, listening to your customers, they all want to interact with you in lots of different ways. And the self-service portal is a very popular way these days. And the mobile app that goes with that to figure out how to have a dialogue with your utility service provider, and for them to learn more about what it is that you bring to bear on the equation, and things that they may just not know at all. We do know that they trust their utilities, and they trust their utilities to provide commodity services. That tends to lead to trusting them to provide other products and services. And so kind of taking that step in the direction of what are those products and services that we could start to provide, and providing that portal or mobile app so that they can learn more about that is going to be something that can that doesn't cost a fortune, that can make a difference. And then in that vein, we're starting to work with utilities who are providing those portals. We're providing those portals on behalf of utilities. And one of those portals that I think will make a big difference, we learned this during COVID, and more utilities are reaching in and thinking about it, is that concept of the agency portal, where businesses in your community, who are your customers, your CNI customers, can make pledges, and those pledges can be matched with people who in need, who are your customers, who can take advantage of that, and you can link that to those products and services that they're interested in. So if it's EV that we're talking about as an example here, maybe that's a way for some of those community members to be able to start to experience that product, and figure out, and it's a way to actually make it accessible to them. So these are things that, yes, do take some work, but don't take an exorbitant amount of investment to push into the discussion and start to make that difference. So that's one thing, inertia. And the second thing is I am going to build on what Jody said in terms of, but I'll frame it as balancing the portfolio. In the push to electrification, primarily, as a nuclear engineer, I want to just say, okay, yes, Edwin, you're going to get your way. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I think we have underserved other, I call them green because it's very true that they're green, right? Green alternatives. And I think we're going to have to swing back in the other direction at some point. And public policy is going to have to face the fact that we need more base generation, and the best base generation that you could provide that's consistent and safe. I'll put it out there, it's safe. And there are alternatives now that aren't the bigger old models that I used to work on in design as a younger engineer. There are smaller modular reactors that are going to be easier for communities to afford, very safe. If we could just get the NRC and other policy providers to come together and recognize we need more diversity in the base energy portfolio, that's going to give us what we need to really make this transition happen, that's really the risk we need to address in my mind.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate you all sharing your perspectives on some of these risks. And I'd invite our attendees again, if there's a top risk that you're up against or a challenge, go ahead and throw it in the chat, because maybe some of our panelists would be happy to speak to it. You have 3 experts here. We also have another question in the chat, which I'm going to hold for just a moment once we get into some specificity around products and services. Edwin, I think I'm back over to you.
Well, I'd like to just continue on to the theme Maureen brought up. She didn't say the word nuclear, though. Did you notice that? She avoided that volatile term nuclear, bringing up, base generation. I love that. I'm almost hearing, wow, if we could take the politicians out of the utility industry and let the engineers and the smart people manage this, we could probably solve a lot of these problems.
Hey, wait a second, Edwin. I'm a politician.
Uh-oh.
Some of us are okay, right?
That's right. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. So Jody, very early in our conversation here, you mentioned about education, and we talked about just addressing some of the challenges here. To just move our customers. We're listening to customers. What kind of education are we doing for folks? I started this. I'm a believer in the whole saying, teach someone to fish rather than give them a fish. Rather than throwing money at it and saying, hey, I'll pay this person's bill, then I can walk away. That's like the guy on the street. You throw a dollar in his basket and feel good for the day, in lieu of doing something to transition that person. What are you all doing in the way of just educating customers to I don't know, ways to improve their lifestyles or protect their lifestyles as costs rise?
Yeah, so for us, I think we spend a lot of time and energy going to in the community. So to get back to what Courtney was talking about, whether it's town halls or putting ourselves in, typical events that are held within the community, it's really getting out amongst the people that we serve and listening to what they're saying and trying to make it a two-way dialogue, right? So sharing and listening, right? But I think overall, as an industry as a whole, we've got to find better, smarter, faster ways to do that. And that really is the challenge. And I can soundly say, I don't think we've cracked that nut yet completely. And I think it's something that we all need to work on together to figure out what is the best ways to do that. And I think it's not so much it's not the how, it's the pace, right? Like we need to increase the pace because everything else is moving faster and faster. So for us, I think we use the typical things you think about in the utility space, which is getting into those community settings and really trying to share that information. But we've got to up our game there.
Sure. Jessica, do you want to comment on that?
So yeah, there's just like Jody mentioned, getting into the community. And I'll give one quick example. Yesterday, we do this every year. We do a light exchange for holiday lights. And I get energy savings for it. So it's good for the utility. I pay it out of my public benefit charge fund account that's specific for energy savings. And residents come to me during our tree lighting event that we do for the city of Colton, and they give me their inefficient old lights that really do cost them like $50 extra a month if they leave those things running, and I give them efficient lights at no cost. So we've done this exchange. It's a feel-good type program. There's not a huge amount of savings that I collect, but the point is getting in front of the customer, like Jody said. And that's just one example. It's easy for me. I have a small community. I know like agencies that are very large who have, territories. It might be more of a challenge, but being a smaller community, that's been one example of how we really do try to get in front of the customer. One other quick example I'll share is we use technology. We have newsletters through Questline that develops information and content that we send to our customer every month. And we customize that to our specific programs, and it gives them tips and interactive videos, so it's fun and not static. And that's another way to reach our customer. We are still learning and figuring out what is the best way to talk to our customer. For commercial and industrials, we developed a program a few years ago. I love it. It's called the Sustainability Partnership. It's a trifecta. A business that does strides in energy efficiency, water conservation, and recycling and organics wins this. We call it an award, and we have them come to our council. We honor them. We buy them a recycled plaque, And that's put into their, to be proud of in their case at their work. So we do things like that, ways to engage, because we do, like Jody mentioned, we want a relationship with our customers, and we're always trying to learn examples from our other colleagues. What are good ways to get those relationships built, so they trust us and know that we're here for them and we're listening and trying to learn with their feedback and information they provide.
Well, that's a great number. You're talking about saving someone $50 a month. That doesn't seem like much, but that could be 3 hours of labor that person's exchanging, before taxes. To you're giving that person back what 4.5 hours maybe of their time to go spend it somewhere else. So that's a big deal. Maureen, did you want to comment on this, or we can move on, or give us any thought?
Just, I know that it's hard to figure out the best way because people are so specific about the channels they want to communicate in. That's one of the things we've been talking about as an industry for the last 5 years or so, maybe longer. Like, what is the preferred channel? But when you know that there's a channel and you have the channel accessible to you, I would think that you'd want to leverage some of those channels. For example, the mobile app, you could use your mobile app. I'm thinking, Jody, just the app that you just rolled out in some of your territories and will continue to roll out, to ask pointed questions, right? And collect the feedback using Qualtrics, right? And that's voice of the customer type stuff, right? So then you can leverage that and trying to come up with what will be meaningful and impactful. And if they're responding to Qualtrics surveys, or they're responding periodically to that could be a great way to gather that feedback. We use, just to talk together as an industry, we use these webcasts. Perhaps that's a way to, occasionally targeted webcasts for specific issues for people who have said they want to opt in and participate in the dialogue. It doesn't take a lot of technology, and it doesn't take a lot of extra money or work to gather the information to figure out, what customers will be interested in, what they can support, what would be their reaction to different programs that you might launch that are more about energy equity, and involve them in that way. And it's easy for them because they're learning how to do this in their jobs anyway, and they've been doing it through COVID, et cetera. So now we're used to it. It might be a great way to do it.
Well, thank you all for that so much. I promised everyone earlier in the session that we were going to dive into some details around products, solutions, programs. So I would love each of our panelists to tell us and tell the audience about one particular program or solution that you're particularly proud of that is directly supporting your low to moderate income customers. And to the question in the chat, if you can also speak to how you're funding that program. So maybe a bit of a description, and then how you're actually funding it. Maureen, let's start right with you on this.
Okay, I'm gonna have to start broadly, and since I'm not a utility, I support utilities, I'm gonna answer it broadly, and I'll ask my colleagues on the phone to get very specific about the programs and their utilities. So at Utegration, I think we're incredibly proud of the work that we've done in AMI. I mentioned that earlier. We did a lot of the programs in AMI 1.0 and then AMI 2.0. And the interesting fact about that is most of the utilities that we supported the implementation of AMI for and led that for them were mid-sized utilities. So utilities with constrained budgets. And why I bring that up is because when you have fear about moving forward with technology, you need to find the right partner that's got standards-based processes and a budget that's going to fit, leveraging, I think, still tier 1 technologies for the solution. And so we're proud of that. We're proud of the products that we've developed to make those solutions work more cost effectively. And we're very proud of the customers who have taken the initial leap of faith with us, who were some of the first adopters of the innovations that we created to support those programs. So, proud of the work that we've done, but we're really proud of the customers and the benefits that they receive from that. So I answered very broadly on purpose. Maybe I can comment on some of the things that Jody or that Jessica bring up as specifics.
Thank you, Maureen. Jessica, let's jump over to you for this one.
So there is one program I am very proud of. Back in 2014, we started the electrification revolution here in Colton. I serve a disadvantaged community, and as you know, and you've mentioned, my other colleagues have mentioned, electric vehicles are expensive. It's not attainable. So what I noticed really quickly was at that time in the market, and I have to say that full disclosure, that time, because today is a different market. But at that time, used vehicles was an amazing, cost-effective way for my customers to be able to get into electric vehicles. And I partnered with my local AQMD for the first grants I ever got with them as a partnership to put in curbside EV chargers at our low-income multifamily. And then my launch was I put marketing inside of their laundry room and with the manager of the multifamily housing complex, letting customers know we had a flat rate of only 20 cents a kilowatt hour for EV charging. We also, this is an extra, the way a lot of EV chargers companies work, if you don't know, you have to have either a keychain or an app, and they charge your credit card. And you hold a balance. That's a lot for, it's usually $25. That's a lot for someone low income. They may not have an extra $25 to put on all these different accounts to charge in different places. So I said, I'm going to invest in a credit card swipe. So customers don't have to have an account. They can just swipe right there at the credit card. And then AQMD at the same time was launching a program where they would take your inefficient junker car and give you $10,000 to turn it in. So now their used electric vehicle, they could attain for $9,000, which is a wonderful and great price on a 2-year used electric Leaf, or at the time the Chevy Bolt was very popular. And then I created a program with LCFS credits, which stands for Low Carbon Fuel Standard in California. You get credits for electric vehicles purchased in your city and for credits from charging. So that's when I launched that program to get funding to continue to fund rebates for low income used electric vehicles. So used electric vehicles for the low income customers I served. So that was one program that was very successful. And I say, you know, just now the used electric vehicle market is almost doesn't exist, just because right now in California, for those that don't know, there's no cars available, even new ones. Like there's a big shortage of supply of everything. But during those first years, it was just an incredible successful program, and I was so happy of the results. And I have data and software that tracks all my chargers in Colton. We have, mind you, we're only 16 square miles, but I have 25 live chargers now, and they all get used. And I could tell by the addresses who's charging, it's people that live in these multifamily communities. So that was a successful program I am proud of that I was able to launch.
Wow.
Jessica, I love the specificity on that. And I mean, you were really early in that, right? And I think, you know, as we're, you know, of course, we're dealing with supply chain and manufacturing, logistical challenges and things like that. And that's probably going to continue for a while, though, like Jody, I am going to remain optimistic on that. But I think it's also, you know, as we think about how do we braid together different sources of funding and different resources for our customers, right? So if you compare a specific rebate and then the charging infrastructure, and then through the IRA, we have $7,500 tax credits for new vehicles and up to $4,500 tax credits for used vehicles. How do we make sure our customers are positioned to take advantage of all of those things that are going to make, you know, for example, new technologies more accessible? So Jody, why don't you oh, Jessica, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to tell you that challenge of knowing where all the incentives are. We actually have a website that we pay for hosted through Zappy Ride, and it gives you all your rebates and incentives in a one-stop shop that's current. So I just wanted to mention that was another thing we launched to help make it easier for the customer.
A great example, Jessica. Jody, one particular program, product, I mean, you have a lot that you offer, but that's specifically supporting your low to moderate income customers, and also how you're funding that, if you would.
Sure. Well, just like I want to say kudos, that definitely a huge accomplishment, and putting everything in one spot for a customer is huge. So kudos. But I wanted to, if you talk to people at Liberty, we go across so many different footprints. If I ask them what program are they most proud of, you're going to get many different depending on where they live. And it could be, I'll use a specific example of our AMI program. In the middle of the pandemic, we put in AMI over our entire footprint in our Missouri location, and talk about coordination and effort, but we know the benefits. To Maureen's point, we knew that we could do this in a very cost-effective way. Obviously, the funding source for those is the overall investment from the utility that's driven by our overall customer base. So it provides us with the opportunity for time and use rates, and allows us to drive different opportunities for people to use power when it is cheaper, and put those decisions in the hands of our customers. So that particular effort I was extremely proud of, because if somebody told me that I had to do that completely virtually at the beginning of the pandemic, I would have said, oh yeah, we can't do that. But we did. We got it done and did it very efficiently, effectively, and great results so far. We've been able to put the time of use program in place. But what I would say is, I think as an industry, we've got a challenge in this area. Like, some of the things are, when we talk to low to moderate income customers, it's like we jump through a lot of hoops to figure out who they are and what they're entitled to. And then as far as getting them those resources, sometimes the paperwork that they have to go through to get it is extremely cumbersome. So I think as an industry, how do we get together and take a look at, there is a lot of assistance for our low income customers. But what I'd like to say is that we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to partner to get them access to those things, and help them through that process. But maybe we could partner better with our local governments and some of our federal programs, and really take the information and find a faster way to get those opportunities directly to our customers in a way that doesn't put a lot of burden on them having to figure out how to apply for this or get this, but at the same turn respects the risk management and due diligence that needs to be done. So I think that's an opportunity we have as an industry. So I look forward to doing some more programs that are going to drive even more effective use of those resources and getting them to the right people the fastest way possible.
Jody, thank you for that. I think you're right. There's so many places where we don't necessarily make it easy. I mean, if you are a utility running programs with local community-based organizations, right, go sit at one of those CBOs and see what happens when customers come in and, oh, they don't have the right paperwork, so you have to go back and get the right paperwork. But maybe I don't have a printer to actually print out my most recent utility bill. Or maybe I took a half day off work or had to pay for childcare to be able to get here, and now you're telling me I have to come back another day. Those are the types of things that we really need to be mindful of and solving for. So with that, Edwin, I think you're going to kick off our very last question, and we'll see if we have any other questions from the audience at that point.
It's the easiest question of all. In my mind, I'm picturing, these old I'm showing my age, these 1970s Charlton Heston movies, or, some futuristic movie of, your vision of the utility of 2030, but really what do you see the utility, what is it going to be like 20 years from now, in 2030, 2040, 2045? Any thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Jessica.
So I really do believe that in the future, our grid will be smart. It'll be behavior based, just like your cell phone. So just like your cell phone now will tell you how many minutes to get to work before, on days sometimes you may not even want to go into work. It knows your behavior, and I think our grid and our software will engage that to make customers able to be smarter about how they use their energy, because they will know how much it costs. I think that has kind of been the underlying push with legislation. They see that this future is coming, and I kind of joke because I bought this smart washer and dryer, and I didn't know why I was buying it at the time, but now that I've learned how to use it, it's actually really convenient and nice. And I think once all of our kind of everything we use that are the luxury items of our home, as it gets more intelligent, you could use it wiser. And I think it'll help with our low income customers. They may not have the smart, intelligent items in their home, but if we could provide them mechanisms, kind of like Maureen talked about and Jody talked about, where they could see their energy usage with an app, so they know, hey, look, my bill's already at $40. It's time for me to conserve, or maybe I need to reach out to my utility to find out tips on what I can do to do better and lower my costs. So I think that's going to be our future. There's going to be a lot more smart, intelligent infrastructure that'll know the behaviors of everyone's consumption of energy.
Great. How about you, Maureen? What do you see?
So, I see a lot of what Jessica just said, and I think that we're marching toward that vision. We're marching toward that right now, and I think it will be accessible to most and hopefully all utilities across North America. My personal vision for 2030 and beyond is that I get to help the public become. I think I'm going to circle back in my career. I'm going to probably end my career right where I started. To help the public become more comfortable with some of the energy choices that are going to make sense in the long run. So as a nuclear engineer, you might expect that I'd love to see the next generation of small modular reactors be considered to support communities with their baseload needs. And I think there should be an economic way to get the job done. But I think there's going to need to be a lot of work in the middle in the next decade or so to help regulators, communities, and the public in general start to engage, debate, and agree on the best approach to achieving this outcome. And I think it's really vital, actually. Sad because my son told me recently that he wasn't sure he was going to have kids. He's 20 years old, and it's not that he doesn't see himself as a dad. He very much does. It's that he's so worried about bringing a kid into a world where we're so challenged by energy and climate change in general, and that made me pretty darn sad. So it's giving me high motivation. If I want to have any grandkids, I'm someday going to have to circle back and help solve these problems. But I think we're going to get there because there's 8 billion brains on the planet. Did you know that? We have our 8 billionth child was born recently. So that's a lot of brains. I think we can get there, and I think the vision will be achieved.
Good, good. All right, Jody, tell us about what you see in the future.
Well, Jessica and Maureen have obviously nailed it. So to build on what they just said, I think there's an opportunity. It can be just simple things like you don't go in a restaurant with a menu and order lobster not knowing what it costs, but yet we put people in that position all the time today when it comes to their energy choices. And we look at, my ancestors were Native American Indians. I think they would cry if they saw the condition that things are in today. I hope to leave them with a place that they could be proud of. And so I think we have an opportunity to do all the things that Jessica and Maureen talked about. But it's really about, it's going to take us looking at things differently. And really, if you think about when the cell phone was introduced, it changed the way we operate. And this is going to cause us to change the way we operate. But that's hard. It's a hard journey. Change for people is not easy, and it's going to take a lot of work to really educate people as to the opportunities. And it's across all socioeconomic areas. And I think for us, for our footprint, we serve all. So I mean, we have very different socioeconomic environments based on where you're talking about in our footprint. And this can't be a socioeconomic issue. It's got to be, how are we going to solve this in a way that it gives everybody an equal opportunity to have access to a sustainable solution that is affordable, reliable, safe, affordable. It's the story of our industry. It hasn't changed, but the how has changed, right? So I'm really excited to be able to be a part of that, and I look forward to seeing some of the changes that we've just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful to you all for being here. I do think we have a question in the chat. So Edwin, maybe we'll turn over to the chat and see if our audience has any other questions. So we have one, and the question is this. I'm going to read it verbatim. The energy transition can be very political for some people. how do you overcome these political differences to get everyone working toward the same goals? Jody, let's go right back to you if you want to share any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll make this short and sweet. When I hear Maureen talk about a story about someone not wanting to bring a child into this world, or me thinking about my ancestors just crying at the state that some of this is in, I think that's not political. That's just basic human. And I think that we need to focus on some of that instead of the politics around it. I think when we talk about solution, sometimes that's where we get political, right? Because there's costs associated with the solutions. But let's face it, I think we all have to recognize this is going to cost us. It wasn't cheap getting in this situation. It's not going to be cheap to get out of it. So I'll just leave it at that.
Jody, I love that. Thank you. Jessica, how about over to you for any thoughts on this one?
So, you know, I studied political science. That's my background. And one thing to remember, I think people and humans make things political, but policy has moved everything in such a positive direction. And that's just, you have to divide the both. Like the policy that came out of some of the regulation has moved us to be conscious that we have been, you know, not being good stewards of our environment. It's what made energy efficiency a priority. We may still have incandescent light bulbs and people consuming more energy when there's technologies today where you could save money. So I think in some ways, like, yes, a lot of people in California may not be happy with the policies on changing our transportation industry, but at the same time, what's so bad about pushing the needle to finally make businesses become as, you know, responsible for the environment as we are trying to be responsible? I just think that there's a balance, and it's not necessarily, I think it's humans and their opinions make things political, or they can try to make it political, but the policy comes out of goodness to do the right thing and to move the industry in a direction that is a good thing. So that's sort, if that one's a hard, I mean, policy is what I do, and regulation is what I study daily, and I'm part of tons of regulation, and a lot of it is, the heart of the legislation is always for the good. It's just how things end up getting transpired once the legislation has been butchered. Because you can't make everybody happy. You have too much industry and too many lobbyists on so many different sides of things pushing the direction and the needle. But in the end, the goals for the environment has always been a positive thing for us. And businesses wouldn't have transitioned, and our own industry would not have transitioned if we weren't encouraged to with the policy.
Thank you for that, Jessica. Maureen, any thoughts?
So many. I think bottom line is people want to do the right thing. They really do. And when you explain the why, we talked about that a little earlier, Jody, you brought it up. When they understand the why we're moving it, that there's something in it for them, that starts to pull them toward the conversation. I think they can be open to hearing what the options are going to be. And we just have to be careful in policy space as we move into policy space and try to make things, you know, make it happen, because that's the vehicle for it. We have to give, you know, we have to remember that there are going to be some people who are going to be outside the policy, and design the policy in a way that can be a little more flexible. We're going to solve this problem. We're going to try not to create additional problems when we solve it, and we recognize we're not solving all the problems. We're just going to take a step in the right direction here, and we'll continue to learn as we move along, and we'll collect the feedback as we go. So it's really the process of involvement in explaining, educating, hearing, listening, designing the most, you know, practical vehicle for the first spot, you know, for the first step forward, and then continuing to evolve the vehicle as we move along. That is going to get the job done. And just being, you know, obviously skillful politicians like yourself, Courtney, will need to engage so that we can get the right, you know, outcome in each community we serve and each jurisdiction we serve. So I'm looking forward to the dialogue. Continue to do so.
Well, thank you for that. And I think a thread through this too is it's stakeholder engagement and development, right? And we talk a lot about, you know, making sure sure different perspectives have a seat at the table, which I think is really important when we're talking about energy equity and working in communities. And I say to people, you know, look around your table. Who's at your table? Who gets to eat at your table? Who has the airtime to actually speak at your table, right? So we need to be really, really mindful of that as we craft policy and legislation to serve the communities that we're invested in. All right, Edwin, I think we have another question. You want to read this one? Do you want me to?
Yeah, can you read the font? I can't even read the font
yeah,
with my glasses on.
I know, it's not, okay. So as we talk about the future of the utility, one of the biggest challenges is to get customers to be more engaged. I believe many customers don't really care as long as their lights are on and their bills are somewhat manageable. And until this is an issue, do you really care? How are you addressing this? Who would like to kick this one off? Jody? Jessica.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Go ahead, Jody.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, so I just wanted to say I'm one of those people that feel that way. I don't really want to engage with my utility on a day-to-day basis unless they have programs that I need to learn about and know about. So I think for us as a utility, there's certain times we want to engage our customers. We want to also continue an open relationship that if you want to be our friend, be our friend. But if you want to be left alone, we'll leave you alone. And the reason why I say that is because when we do what we're about to do, cost of service study and a potential rate increase, we need to have a relationship so that our customers understand how power works. Yes, you're absolutely right. When you turn on that light, you expect the power to be on. And man, are you very upset with us when the power is not on. They are never happy. But then the minute the power comes back on, they thank us and they thank our guys for being out in the field overnight for 24 hours, making the power go back on. So yes, there needs to be the relationship where we're open, but at the same time, I don't want to harass you. I want you to come and be my friend when you want to be my friend. I want to learn about programs from my utility when those programs arise that help lower my bills. And I want to know about when you're about to go on a rate study, what does that mean? Like where does my power mix come from and what value do you bring to my community? I know Jody mentioned the great values and how much money they give back to the community, but could you imagine if you were doing a rate study and nobody knew all those things, the great things you do? That's always been a struggle for us. Like, so we want our customers to know, hey, we're there for you. We do all these things, but unfortunately, power is not free. You know, how nice would it be if we didn't have to pay for electricity costs? But that's not a reality. Like nobody wants to live in a dark cave with a candle. That was a choice, you know, you make, and the luxury of that is having power that we provide you. And there's a cost associated with that. But I think that's like the balance. I'm here for you when you want to be my friend. I'm willing to talk to you anytime. My phone's always open and we'll have that dialogue. On social media, we'll provide you information. You choose when you want to engage with us. We don't want to force it down your throat.
It really is it's a long-term relationship. Jody, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I think over time we've been gifted with a lot of different tools, whether it's social media or otherwise, but I think we have to continue. Look, I was one of those people, like I walked in the house, I flipped the light switch on, I never asked any questions. And then when I started researching the industry and thinking about moving and working in the industry, I was like, wow, that switch may not work at some point. And you know, some of the areas of our country, like that happens fairly regularly, right? So what do I need to do to make sure that my investment every month is you know, going to give me what I need longer term? And oh, by the way, as long as we're talking about climate change, how do I need to stay engaged and educated? Now, is that people's first priority? No, but I think there's enough ways to try to get that information out there subtly, whether it's being in the communities, using social media, but it's got to be relentless, because you got to get people to want to engage, right? Like you've got to get them to start asking questions. And when that rate case rolls around, well, of course we need to invest in our infrastructure to change the way that we operate, or that we need to, maintain those assets that we currently have. And I think that this is an area that everybody in the industry is challenged with, because it's not going to be good enough anymore to just not participate. It's not going to get us where we need to go. I get it, because I'm one of those people where I don't really want to know unless I need something, or I don't talk to my utility unless I need something. But we've got to change that dynamic. And I think using all the tools available to us to keep educating, being in the community, using social media, it's extremely important. But I think we've got more work to do here as an industry to figure that out.
Thank you, Jody. Maureen, do you want to weigh in on this one?
I do, thank you. I think the word talking is the misnomer here. It's I appreciate the question, by the way. Such a great question. Engaging where people want to engage is actually probably the biggest challenge, right? So what I think we're seeing in the industry, and at least I'm seeing it with my customer, City of Tacoma, DTE, who I mentioned earlier, Summit Utilities in Arkansas, it's when you make the effort to engage on multiple channels and then really target the channel that the customer says is their preference, right? For me, it's SMS. I love to hear from you all day long, utility, as many as you want. You want to talk to me as often as you want. Tell me how much I've consumed. Let me know if there's an outage in my area. I love it. Just send it on my SMS. I don't want to hear a phone call. I don't want you to call my house. I don't want you to, I don't want to have to contact you. I want you to be proactive and tell me what's going on. So it's that proactive engagement on the channel of preference that I think is going to start the interest in actually engaging further, because I have this perception now. Oh my gosh, they're being okay. My power is out. I have time to go to the store now. I'll go down to Reno. I will do some shopping. By the time I get home, the power will be back on, because that's what they told me. So I'll just run to Reno. So it changed my day, but it didn't change my day in a negative way. And I have this positive perception of my utility for having made the effort to communicate with me. I think they're awesome. And so it's that, okay, now we've got a positive engagement. Now I'm expecting more from you. I'm expecting you to tell me about some of the other things I think I might need to know about. And you can use that same channel. You can use that. And maybe I won't learn that much on an SMS text, but I will start to get interested in trying to go to the place you want me to go to, so that I can learn more from there. And so it's that notion of more channels, figure out what they care about, talk to them right there, get proactive on the outages when they occur, because they do occur, build that perception of I am proactive, I'm your utility provider, I'm proactive, and I care about you, and then grab them, because that's what's gonna generate the interest in moving forward with us, right? And we need you all. We need them. We can't do it without them. So,
Absolutely. Well,
Customer.
yes, voice of the customer. Well, we have 2 minutes left here, so I really want to thank Energy Central and Utility 2030 for hosting this. Edwin, I think we have a couple of events that we want to share. So if folks were, if you enjoyed this session, if you want to participate in more learning opportunities and sessions like this, a couple of quick things for you. So Utility 2030 is now hosting what we call Take 30 Stretch and Learn sessions. So these are very, very short 30-minute sessions. We have the next one coming up on December 8th, so just next week. Totally virtual, 2 to 2:30 Eastern. These are very targeted conversations. So this is about better predicting payment challenges. If you've worked in this industry for a long time, you know that payment challenges kind of continue to plague us at various times. So it's a really important one. And then we also have something that we're really excited to share. This is the first Utility 2030 Think-a-thon. It is going to be hosted at Baltimore Gas and Electric in the spring, April 16th to 18th of 2023. And we're going to be very focused on using design thinking and customer-centric type approaches to tackle when rising rates and uncollected debt converge, which has been a huge issue for some certain areas throughout the country. So this is a wonderful opportunity. And the very last thing, we didn't mention it in the beginning, we should have, but Jessica, Maureen, and Jody were all part of our first cohort of Utility 2030 Women Who Spark Award winners. And they were all winners for the innovative work that they're doing to move our industry forward. So we are taking nominations for our 2023 program. Those are now being accepted, and you can visit utility2030.org to learn more information about this and to actually submit a nomination. So I really want to thank our panelists. Edwin, it is always fun to do these things with you. You might have a closing thought, and then I'm going to turn it over to PJ to just wrap up on the Energy Central side.
Courtney, thank you so much. Jody, Maureen, Jessica, it's just always such a pleasure to just sit with you all. It's edifying. I always come away with all these different thoughts and things that I want to share with some of my team. And I really have picked on, I love the general views and then the specificity that you get in, you know, what can I do? And Jessica, I'm really going to remember that $50 on changing the light bulb. I mean, it's so simple to understand. That is such a simple thing to understand. Anybody can get that. And so I really, really do appreciate that. And I'm not sure, Maureen, I really got to go think about your comment about, you know, your son and all. And I've been reading a lot about the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. And it seems like times were very similar then. But Jody, God bless you. You're dealing with so many different utilities, so many different areas, and how you keep your arms around this. You're always smiling with us. Thank you. It really is a pleasure. So I just enjoy hearing from you all, the discussions. Courtney, it's an honor sitting on a panel with you, being able to talk to these wonderful people. Thank you very much.
It was an honor.
Well, thank you everyone for attending.
And thank you
and
all.
PJ, over to you.
Sorry about that. Just wanted to thank everyone for coming. As you log off, please take a moment to fill out our survey. Give us your feedback, any further remarks that you didn't have a chance to give us live on the event today, and we will pass those along to our presenters. Look out for the link to the replay. We'll be putting that together soon as well. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, panelists, for participating. This does conclude today's presentation.